What's up, guys? Just waiting for some people to get on. Got the Santa hat. Got my dog. What's up, guys? Just waiting for some people to get on. One thing I learned when I was doing this before is I would start right out of the gate and realize most people would miss the first half. So give it about a minute. If somebody's watching, can you say hello? Let me know that I'm not just talking to a screen, please. Yay! What's up, Debbie? What's up, second person who's anonymous? Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. Hope everyone's doing well. Merry Christmas. I haven't bought any gifts yet. Have you guys bought gifts yet for your loved ones? Net neutrality. We got 4 viewers so far. That's cool. 3. Somebody didn't like my hat. Maybe there's more and they're hiding. I don't know how this Facebook algorithm works. 2. Wow. I'm losing people quick. Hello. All right, so we're going to get this started. I'm going to hit record. And then that will be the official podcast. If you guys ever listen to podcasts, we're on Spotify now. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, and all of the podcast players, iHeartRadio. Trying to grow this thing. Please share. Give it one more minute and we'll get this party started. We're going to talk about net neutrality and the Federal Communications Commission. Got my black coffee in hand. Cheers. Let's go. Hello and welcome. Today is December 14th, 2017. This is episode 18 of Counterculture. We are live on Facebook and this is being recorded as a podcast. And today's podcast is titled Net Neutrality Died Today, and that is awesome. And the reason I decided to podcast on this issue was it's an issue that I've been following since they first tried to push this way back, I think, in 2013. And for some reason, the political lines and the way people align didn't fall normally the way they fall. There were a lot of conservatives who were for it, and then there were some who were against it. There were liberals who were for it and against it. So I guess that's a good thing that we're not divided along the typical lines, but I think that there's a lot of people that are misled and don't completely understand all of the facts pertaining to what happened today. So what happened today? Well, today's December 14th, 2017. And once again, my name is Aaron Lujan. This is Counterculture, episode 18. Thank you for joining me. The Federal Communications Commission voted 3-2 to repeal 2015 regulations called net neutrality, which forced ISPs or internet providers to be able to quote unquote protect consumers from slow internet, from high prices, and making sure that it keeps all content equal and there's no discrimination on content. For example, the 2015 FCC rules required that ISPs not increase prices based on, or charge specific prices based on content, like charging higher for Netflix versus YouTube, or being able to throttle you from different speeds, slowing you down, forcing ISPs not to block or slow down high demand internet services, that you couldn't pick favorites. The 2015 FCC rules that were placed during the Obama era were promised to keep prices low, preventing ISPs from charging you more. They argued that we were going to, what's up, Chris Rosenhan, level the playing field so that all content is equal. Now, I saw a lot of people today. I actually had a post on Facebook, which was kind of the reason why I decided to do episode 18 on this, kind of confused, asking, well, why would you be against this? It seems like a lot of my friends out there thought that it was a bad thing, thought that net neutrality was a good thing, and the fact that we repealed those rules was a sore spot in our history. And if you look at the name of the bill and you think about what I just said, why would anybody be against that? Why would anybody be against neutrality? Why would anybody be against equality? Why would I be opposed to low prices? Why would I be opposed to fairness? Why would I want to repeal rules that would preserve people's ability to stream their favorite content at high speeds and not have it slow down? You know, that would be ridiculous, right? I'm for low prices. I'm for fast internet. I don't think that certain content should be chosen over other content. So allow me to explain why I believe, and obviously Ajit Pai, who's the head of the FCC, and millions of other people and institutions and groups are celebrating today. Well, let me begin by saying something that has been rarely mentioned in the mainstream media, which is the fact that this even went to the Federal Communications Commission up for a vote is an illegal abuse of power. We live in a country where regulations and laws are executed by the people for the people. That's why we have, you know, equal branches of government, a Senate, a Congress. And so if you're going to regulate something according to the law of our land here in the United States, it must be authorized by Congress. We, the people, elect our representatives, and we empower them to decide what can be regulated. And that was attempted during the Obama era. If anybody remembers CISPA, it was an early version of the 2015 FCC regulations to keep the internet speeds high, keep ISPs under regulatory control. It failed. It couldn't pass legal muster. It couldn't pass Congress. So then they tried SOPA. And for all my Mexican folks, we're not referring to soup or pozole. I know it's Christmas. We're referring to this form of the bill or form of this FCC rules that also failed, couldn't pass legal muster, failed in Congress. So what they attempted to do then at that point is illegally bypass Congress and under Title II of the Telecommunications Act of 1934, allow the Federal Communications Commission to regulate internet providers. If anyone's read Title II of the Telecom Act of 1934, it would have absolutely no application to internet whatsoever. On a very thin string, very few legal experts are even arguing that it does, which I believe is the reason why this part of the issue or the topic is not really discussed. The fact that sending it to the FCC and having a bureaucracy, a commission that's not elected by the people, regulate an industry that they have no authority to regulate. The FCC cannot regulate something that was not authorized by Congress. So you can turn off this podcast now and not listen to any of my other points, but just on that point alone, it's an illegal abuse of power to even attempt to have these 2015 regulations on ISPs. But take that aside. The main argument of people who were for net neutrality and wanted to preserve it was that prices will go up if we do not have ISPs under the regulatory control of the FCC. Now, I don't know about you, but I remember when I first got on the internet way back, I think it was in 1994. Welcome, you have mail. Remember AOL? People Connection, chat groups. 14 mail, SD, any girls? You guys remember that, right? I remember going home one day I remember being at my friend's house, and my friend's mom got a phone call, and she's looking at me, she's like, your mom's on the phone. And like that looked like you're in a lot of trouble, and I'm 14 years old. And she goes, what in the hell are you doing calling Ohio for 9 hours? Who's living in Ohio? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't even use the phone. I don't know anybody in Ohio. And then it hit me, because I was using AOL and 56K dial-up, I was using the telephone lines, and I was basically charging my parents an astronomical local phone bill. Remember, this is 1994, 1995, when you would pay for long distance, and the bill was hundreds of dollars, and they looked at me like, are you freaking kidding me? You're 14 years old. You're not able to pay this. They have to pay this. They were perturbed. So my point in all of this is that it was expensive back in the day. And then what happened? We had innovation. We went from 56K dial-up from the to the, I don't know, what was the next iteration? I don't remember what it was, but the internet got faster and faster and faster. And then next thing you know, the prices got lower and lower and lower. Remember all the AOL CDs? 20 minutes free, 100 minutes free, 250 minutes or 250 hours free, 1,000 hours free, 10,000 hours free. The next 80 years are free. And it was like, oh my gosh, the price just keeps getting better and better and better. And then transitioning to cell phones. Did anyone have a cell phone in 99, 2000? I was paying per the minute. And then what happened? Then they started coming out with plans. And if you have 300 minutes, you pay this much, 500, this much. And then it was, well, you get this entire package for this amount. And then now we're in the age of unlimited data, unlimited text, 4G, LTE. Now it's $45, and poor people can go to Walmart and get a $20 phone, in some cases a free phone, and access high-speed internet for the cost of like a lunch with two people. When 10, 15 years ago, it was, you know, like a mortgage payment just to be able to access all of this data and this information. So my point is that without government regulation, because remember, up until this point, we had no government regulation on the internet, the technology improved and the prices got lower and lower and lower. So without government regulation, we were able to decrease prices and increase quality, and no one was really complaining then. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that by having government regulation will only increase prices, because a lot of analysts who have looked at this have said, well, once the FCC regulates ISPs, your Comcast, your T-Mobile, your Verizon, whoever provides your internet service, sometimes it's bundled in your cable and your phone, they're going to have taxes imposed on them, which will then get passed on to you and to I in the form of higher prices, because they got to pass on that cost somehow. So arguably, once these taxes and bureaucracy come into play, we're going to have more expensive internet. That's the lie. That, oh, we need the FCC and we need net neutrality to keep ISPs from being increasing prices, when in fact history has proven that through the free market and innovation, prices continue to go down as quality goes up. And then if you've looked at any other area of commerce, anytime the government gets involved, prices typically go up, i.e. healthcare. This is all proof. This is not my opinion. This is not hypothetical. This is historical fact. We all know cell phones are cheaper today than they were in 1995 when we were listening to CNC Music Factory. Everybody dance now. It's that black coffee. Any CNC Music Factory fans out there? I'm still down. Anyways, sorry about that. Problem that it attempts to address is already solved by the free market. So, I was watching John Oliver. What network is that guy on? I don't know. I was watching Tech Insider and all of these really polished, guys with, clothes that is a lot more expensive than I own, telling me that if we repeal net neutrality, that we are going to have our favorite services like Netflix and YouTube slow down. God forbid, Game of Thrones gets buffered. I gotta see everything in HD. I don't want my internet slowed. I guess that was the tactic, right? Go after, where it hurts. We all love our YouTube and our Netflix and our HBO and all that stuff. And so they're telling us, well, if we repeal the net neutrality rules, and if the FCC, pulls out of these 2015 rules, we're going to not be able to see our content, and it's going to be unfair, and you're not going to be able to see your favorite stuff. Well, If you just go back a couple years, we can all remember that Netflix, Comcast, and Verizon cut a deal to make sure that that doesn't happen. See, that's the way the free market works, is competitors or players in the market who want to make money and increase their market share will sometimes cooperate, will sometimes compete against each other to figure out ways to win. And that's what makes the free market so beautiful. And that's exactly what we experienced. Again, historical fact, just a few years ago, when there was suggestion or maybe evidence of some content slowing down in favor of other content, Netflix, Comcast, and Verizon cut a deal. They made an agreement. They solved the problem. I watched the John Oliver thing. He said that he used an example of T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T had their own bill pay app similar to Google Wallet, and that they, for a time, shut out Google Wallet in favor of their own pay service. And that was the example that John Oliver and the opponents or the proponents of FCC regulation used to say, see, I told you, if you don't allow the FCC to regulate this, this is what happens. But what was so glaringly obvious about John Oliver's example is that the free market resolved it. It wasn't the government that got AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile to drop Google Wallet. They did it on their own, and they brought it back because people didn't want to use their service. The customers, the people made the decision, not the government. It was a free market decision. Again, evidence that we don't need the FCC to tell ISPs not to block content because the market will force them not to anyways. Does anybody remember, I think it was about a year or two ago, AT&T was in the news big time because their wireless customers were promised unlimited data. And there were cases when they were using video streaming like on YouTube and Netflix, they got throttled down to 2G and they weren't able to fluidly watch video on their devices. The market freaked the heck out. What did they do? They screamed, they cried. It was all over the news. AT&T backed off. They fixed it, not to the benefit of government regulation or the FCC, but to the fact that a bunch of junior hires and people got upset because their YouTube was buffering, and they said, if you don't fix this, I'm going to leave AT&T and go to T-Mobile or go to Verizon. Again, the free market, allowing people to make the decisions for themselves, not a government bureaucracy. Proof is in the pudding. And more proof of this is that if you compare the internet speeds in Europe to us here in the United States, it's actually faster here. Anybody who's ever traveled to Europe will admit this. Anybody who's from Europe knows this. Look it up. Don't trust me. Ask the Alphabet Company. Europe has the internet as a public utility. Across the board, internet is slower. Internet speeds in the United States are faster. We have a lighter touch of regulation as opposed to Europe. So everyone says that was opposed to this repeal of the 2015 FCC net neutrality rules. Oh, you're just in favor of big corporations and, you know, the evil corporations, Comcast and all these big bad ISPs. How could you ever side with the big corporate fat cats? One little detail that people forget to realize is that these big giant fat cat ISPs aren't the only ISPs. I happen to be familiar with some rural areas in the US, and I happen to have come across companies who are ISPs, some of them satellite, some of them local, some of them just serve, 6,000, homes in some rural area of northern New Mexico. I mean, there's a market of ISPs that don't have the size and the national scope of a Comcast or a CenturyLink or a Verizon, but they're nevertheless ISPs who are providing this internet service. And why I bring that up is that under the 2015 FCC net neutrality rules, these little ISPs had to submit business models, any changes to their business models and any innovations to the Federal Communications Commission for approval that, guess what, costs money, costs time, costs red tape. So what do you think that would do to a small ISP? Do you think they would have any motivation to be on the cutting edge and grow, and maybe one day that little train that could became the next Comcast or the next Verizon? Well, this is good news today that those rules got passed, because now these little ISPs can innovate, regulate, change their business model, don't need approval from the nanny state, and they can just simply innovate the same way that Google became Google, the same way that Facebook started in a dorm room in Harvard, the same way that a lot of these internet innovations became huge billion-dollar cap companies, is because they were they were allowed to innovate and not stopped by government. Now, what's really at play here, and I'm just going to kind of close off with this. So we talked about, beginning with the fact that this should have never even been in the FCC's desk, because the FCC isn't authorized to regulate anything that isn't authorized by Congress. We talked about how prices will fall without net neutrality, that the free market will bring prices lower and improve quality, like we've experienced with internet speeds today from 1995, or the cost of cell phones, or the cost of computers. That's all proven. We already know that government regulation will increase price, because in the bill it says they're going to impose taxes on ISPs. Well, guess what? The ISPs aren't going to just swallow that. They're going to pay it and pass it on to you and to I. And then then I discussed how the problem has already been solved by the free market with regards to preventing ISPs from blocking certain content. We saw it when AT&T a year or two ago throttled down people's unlimited data plans to 2G when they started streaming video service. We saw it when the major wireless companies shut out Google Wallet and then brought it back in when the market realized that they didn't like it that much. They preferred Google Wallet. We see it currently right now with European speeds being slower. But what I really wanted to focus on, and what I will close on at this, is that I believe that this 2015 net neutrality was a Trojan horse. What I mean by that is it was intended to censor content eventually, and it makes logical sense. I don't need to have a crystal ball. It's pretty obvious that if you can censor content, if you can censor, if you can control price, and if you can make internet a utility, then that would logically lead to the licensing of that utility. And the internet happens to be a free speech medium. And if that free speech medium becomes a public utility, like any other utility, logically the government could require a license. So where am I going with this? If I want to operate AaronLujan.com, I may need to go to the government and apply, like broadcast, cable, and TV, and say, may I please have a website? And then the government say, you know what, I don't like your Santa Claus hat, homeboy. You can't broadcast. You can't have your website. So that's what a lot of people at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is on the forefront of internet privacy, a really nonpartisan group, quite honestly, because they piss off liberals and conservatives consistently. The EFF has come out and said that the 2015 net neutrality was a draconian measure to regulate the internet, take full control, kill the innovation, and kill free speech. So, who's in support of net neutrality? The guys who've been censoring for the last couple years. Facebook, Google, the federal government. Do you guys think that YouTube's been censoring people lately? Do you guys know that? Do you guys know that? I'm sure we all do, that Google's been, with the Google News, with the censorship that's going on YouTube. If you don't know about it, look it up. It's across the board. These same groups are all in support of net neutrality. So if you're going to make the argument that, net neutrality was stopping all these evil companies, then you have to say that Google and Facebook and the federal government aren't evil companies and institutions, just Comcast and everybody else. That doesn't pass logical muster. If we are going to make the argument that net neutrality stops evil corporate fat cats, we can't overlook the fact that Google and Facebook are in support of net neutrality, especially when they've been doing all of this censoring lately. Threat to free speech. It's a Trojan horse for censorship under the guise of equality and fairness among corporations. The free market already preserves low prices. It already preserves a high quality of service. We've seen that with our freaking cameras on our phones. They've improved a little bit since the pager days, haven't they? didn't need government regulation to get better. We didn't need government regulation to force AT&T to stop throttling their customers. The market demanded it, and now we're getting into beyond 4G LTE. And we didn't need the federal government to bring prices down on computers, and we certainly don't need the federal government to impose taxes on ISPs will to ultimately get passed on to us to quote unquote lower prices. Guys, do your homework. This was an attempt by totalitarians to censor free speech and to be able to control the internet. I happen to have a worldview, and you can have a different worldview, but I would encourage you to listen to me and to consider that this worldview that small government and free market enterprise is the best way to institute low prices and high quality, not the federal government. This was Counterculture, episode 18. That's all I wanted to say on the net neutrality issue. You can find everything on Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify. Spot me on Spotify, AaronLujan.com. Merry Christmas, and that's all. Bye.